to me that's wreck. I get the forces of the market, but you know what? When you're looking at our people killing each other, you know that's sort of blood money to me. That was just my thing.
Harden, and I think you can find interesting similarities and parallels, not just in growing up how to survive in a ghetto or slum or any dangerous environment, but even when you look at your work environment, whether it's corporate America or whether you're in the public sector and that type of thing, and you begin to look at the rules of the games. And obviously you had these guys who were mentors or coaches of some of these guys, and they kept this distance while at the same time they were kind of, you know, managing expectations. So there was, so to speak, this neighborhood reputation that they were building and trying to protect. And so they had these young boys, and some of them not so young, who inevitably they were trying to say, you know, we're building this brand, interestingly enough, so to speak. And everybody was a part of that, whether they wanted to be or not. So I found that quite intriguing. And I think about the parallels of what even goes on in corporate America and the work life every day in terms of building survival skills. It was just a different way of looking at it when I just made parallels to what I created.
Wow. Around what age were you? Well,
I guess.
Anyone here identify with or connect personally to that teaching of violence that Canada described in his younger years and throughout the book? I mean, I think a couple people kind of talked about that, but I thought it was just so interesting how his mother came out and was like, no, when his jacket got stolen, was like, no, you need to learn to protect yourself. And basically told him, you need to go and learn how to fight, you know. I don't know, so can anyone identify or want to share or something like this?
I can identify 100%. Growing up in Detroit, it was, we were in the inner city, and our lessons were identical to what was displayed in the book. It was, if someone takes something from you, you go get it back. It wasn't none of this, your mom coming out the house and hunting down these kids. She sent you out there to get your stuff. And you were expected to fight. Your oldest daughter, her father, was a gang member. I was a bookworm. I mean, I was just a student who ended up, you know, getting pregnant at a young age. But because he was a gang member, I had to protect myself, you know, against the tough girls in the neighborhood. So I was fighting and scrapping all the time, all the time. So I was indoctrinated with violence, even as a young age, and I just managed to. As I got older, my focus stayed on school, and so I was able to come out of that environment, much like all. So yes, when I was reading the book, I was just shaking my head like, yeah, that's how we did it, and that is how we did it.
Bob, it was the exact same walk. You know, you had to establish yourself, and that whole thing of not being chunked. I remember one year, you know, we had a little confrontation during the summer, and we got back to school. I knew I had to meet this guy and we were gonna get it on, you know, because of what happened during the summer, because it was just expected, no other reason. And then again, like you said, during that time, you know, late 6 years, there was no money involved. You know, it was just about, you know, you cross 52nd Street, you know, there it was. And also, you know, talking about violence, you know, I started thinking about it, kind of chuckled, like, my mother is 86, lives in DeSoto, still alive, God bless her. Still never knows that I was carrying a knife in my daily newspaper when I went out of my neighborhood. So I mean, it was a lot of, and I went to Catholic school, so I was a good kid, you know. But it was the same thing. You know, you were prepared for a battle, you learned the battle. But again, at that time when we were body boxing, it was just kind of fun. But really, it was, you know, the older kids prepared us to protect ourselves.
Rated on the media, just nonstop, the Casey Anthony's of the world. And, but there's so many of our kids are, like you said, what was outlined in the book, shot dead in the street every day. You know, you never hear about it, and when you do hear about it, they try to attach our civil rights leaders to it, and they minimize the significance of the murder because they try to turn it into this political thing, and, you know, and get all these people involved, and it's just, it's almost like when a black person dies in this country, it's just so unhelpful to most of us.
What is your perspective on violence being transgenerational or genetic, like something that it's passed through generations, or more people are being more genetically predispositioned to violence? Given the prevalence of blacks in prisons and the violent and misogynistic music in our community, is there any room for argument that black people have a certain genetic or natural predisposition for violence, or is it all learned?
I don't think it's genetic. I think, I also don't think it's learned. I think a lot of what it is it's allowed. And the easier way to look at it is, and I hate to compare this, but look at New York in the 80s and the 90s with Rudy Giuliani. One thing he said was, if you focus on the irrelevant crimes, the bigger crimes will somehow get affected. And in a way, it was true. But I think back to a neighbor that I had growing up. We rented an apartment that we had in the house next door we owned. And the kid, when the family moved in, there was a mother and father, and a 7-year-old son. 8 years later, when they moved out, it was mother, husband, and 7 children. But in the process, the kids were never disciplined. The mother let them get away with stuff. And what started as little, and we were talking all the time saying, don't let him go in there, don't let him do this, and it's wrong. But the mother would always say, don't worry, he's my son, don't talk to my son, etc. Just let him be. And they let him get away. And the thing is, if you let him get away with little stuff, it's going to escalate.
Wherever, I'm more likely to be violent. And so, I think that when I was growing up, there were like kids there were like 2 sets of kids, right? One of those sets of kids, when they got in trouble at school, their parents came down there. And they might get their spanking right there in the hallway of school, right? And then there was this other set of kids whose mom came running in the door, don't touch my child, and don't do this and don't do that, right? By the time we got to high school, those were the kids that were in trouble. Right? Versus the kids that, I wasn't going to do very much at school. Because I knew my mom was behind my show up. She was probably going to hit me and scream at me in front of people and embarrass me, and I was going to have to live that down. So I was less likely to do stuff that I was going to get caught for in school. Right? So I had to be a little more crafty about it and do it outside of school or do it someplace where I might not get caught. Versus, because I knew she wasn't going to run down there saying, don't suspend my kid and don't put her in detention and don't do that. It was more like, oh yeah, do that. And then I got a little something for you later, right? Versus, people coming running down there, don't touch my baby and don't do this and that, right? I'm gonna sue the school. Those were the kids, at least from my experience. By the time we got to high school, was one breaking in our house and stuff like that.